Hello, and welcome to My Week in Baseball. I'm your host, Phil Estruth Harrison. You're listening to episode number 4. This episode is published as a podcast on Buzzsprout and Spotify, and is also available in a video version on YouTube. In this episode, we'll discuss a triple that should not have been, Anthony Rizzo's big night, an amazing dad catch of a foul ball, and you'll learn the meaning of the word squatchee. Really, I kid you not. And of course, we'll also have our cap of the day, a timely Blimerick, baseball limerick, and a popular segment, our blast from the past. So let's get right to it. Today's cap of the day is the Cincinnati Reds. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see it, but I will describe it for you. This is the cap that I believe is most commonly used as an away cap. It's got the red body for the cap. It has a black brim, and on the top, it has a black button, which is known as a squatchee. So the button, or the squatchee, is the area on the very top of the cap where all of the panels come together, and that is, in this case, a different color. It really is the accent color, which also matches the brim of the cap. And it's got the traditional font style of the Cincinnati Reds C on top. It's a beautiful cap. My wife gave me this cap just before the 2000 season, when Ken Griffey Jr. was traded from the Mariners to the Reds, as I was quite a fan of Griffey and that era of the Mariners, when they had Jay Buhner, Edgar Martinez, Randy Johnson. Wow, what a team. Anyway, in that deal, Ken Griffey Jr. was traded for 4 players, one of whom will be featured in our Blast from the Past segment later in today's broadcast. So stay tuned. Perhaps you can guess who it will be. Okay, on to recent news. On April 21, and I love this quote, we're going to talk about the watching the paint dry incident. Pirates' Brian Reynolds breaks the shift with a triple as the Cubs forget to cover third base. Now, you may have read about this. So there's a lefty, Brian Reynolds, at the plate for the Pirates, and the Cubs are playing a shift, an extreme shift against him. The only person on the left side of the infield is the third baseman, Patrick Wisdom, and he's playing where the shortstop really should be. This ends up being the softest triple ever hit in the StatCast era since they have been tracking exit velocity. It is hit at 47 miles an hour, a little squibber down the third baseline. It rolls toward the left field corner. And Wisdom, and that's an ironic name for a player for this particular lack of wisdom play, he jogs after the ball and makes a rather unhurried throw to second base. But what happens? Reynolds doesn't stop running. Just as the ball is getting to second, Reynolds is passing second, heads toward third, and with Patrick Wisdom, the third baseman, out in left field, there's nobody anywhere near third base. It's something that really, in normal circumstances without the shift, is an easy ground out. But instead, at best should be a double in this case, and ends up being a triple due to the Cubs' lack of follow through on the play. They kind of nonchalanted it, and I love this quote from the Cubs manager David Ross, who says about the play, and it's a quote from apparently a favorite movie of his, Hoosiers, if you've seen that. I think, quote, "I think we got caught a little bit watching the paint dry," as they would say. So that's exactly what they were doing, or watching the chalk along the third baseline. I'm not exactly sure. Anyway, a very clever play. One of those things that just makes baseball so much fun. Next up, on April 26 is the dad catch. And as only a dad could do, there is a foul ball caught while feeding a baby in the stands. So this information comes from an article by Tom Vorsis of MLB. They're in Cincinnati at the Great American Ballpark, and the Padres are up to bat. It's the Padres' number 3 prospect, Louis Campusano, He's a right-handed hitter, and he's at the plate. And as a right-handed hitter, he's pulling the ball, and he lofts a high pop fly toward third base. It goes over the visitors' dugout of the Padres and into the box seat area behind the third base dugout. There's a dad sitting in the stands. He has a baby carrier strapped to his chest. And those of you who have been dads probably knows what this feels like, complete with the baby in it. And he is, at the moment that the ball arrives, he has one hand holding a bottle, feeding the baby. The ball is coming toward him in the stands, and he reaches up with his other hand rather nonchalantly and reaches over. He leans forward slightly and reaches into the row in front of him and snags the ball barehanded. He leans back. The baby doesn't miss a beat, keeps right on drinking from the bottle, and his wife turns toward him and applauds. And it's just such a clever moment, an amazing catch, and very cool-headed, and something I'm sure the infant will be told about in years to come as a matter of family lore. But another just fun play on a pop fly into the stands. Next up, on April 26, Anthony Rizzo has a game for the ages, his best career game ever. He hits 3 home runs, the first time he's ever done this. And one of them is just beyond the reach of Orioles right fielder Anthony Santander. And this quote is from Rizzo. So I love it when you can get a good player quote about how he feels about the game. And he's talking in this quote, part of it, he's talking about the 3rd home run, which the first 2, so the first one is, one of them is just out of the reach of the Orioles right fielder. The second one is in the same general area, but a little farther back. It's more of a no-doubter. The third one looks certainly like it's going to be a foul ball. Rizzo just rakes it down the right field line, headed toward the foul pole. And of all of you know, it may be now called the fair pole, because of course, if a ball hits the foul pole, it's a home run. It's fair. It's headed toward the pole, and it looks like, and even in the video reviews, it looks like it's heading toward foul territory. And somehow it seems to spin back the other way just enough to be fair. And it's ends up being his 3rd homer of the game. It's quite a shot. Anyway, here's Anthony Rizzo's quote from the New York Yankees. "I was just shocked," he says. "I've never hit 3 homers in a game. It was a cool way for it to come back and be fair. I thought there was 0% chance that it would be fair." And it does kind of look like that too. As he hits the ball, it's more like he's standing there kind of watching it, knowing it's going to go foul and he's going to, get another pitch to hit. And then suddenly it's fair, and he's shocked, and he drops the bat and he runs around the bases. But a fun game for Rizzo. It looks like he's going to be terrific for the Yankees, and so nice to see. I mean, I always liked him with the Cubs, and these kind of players coming to the Yankees are a little tough for me because I've never really liked the Yankees. But sometimes they get a player that I really enjoy watching. And Rizzo is one of those, coming up and helping the Cubs win that World Series back in 2016. And I think he's going to have a great season with the Yankees. So anyway, that was Rizzo's awesome 3 home run game. Next topic I have is related to fantasy baseball, which we haven't talked really much of any about yet. And we will be having more on this in the coming episodes. So I play in a points league, 10-team points league, American League, and National League players. Recently we changed the way we score the points. So traditionally, at least in our league, and this is the only league I play in, so I can't state that this is necessarily true for most leagues, but we have 4 starting pitchers, well, or really for any pitcher, we have traditionally awarded +5 points if the pitcher gets credited with the win, and -5 points if the pitcher gets the loss. And we found that that feels a bit unfair because so often pitchers pitch well and their team doesn't do well and they get an unfair loss, or other times they pitch rather poorly and their team scores a ton of runs and they get rather an unfair win. So this year we decided, we're going to drop those. We're basically going by innings pitched and strikeouts and hits allowed, that type of thing. But we decided to keep saves because saves give value to relievers, and without them, relievers would be of much more limited value in the league. So we're trying to balance that. In the past, though, because we had losses, a reliever could also, they could get a save, which was worth +5. If they pitched poorly, they could get a loss, just like any pitcher could, which would be -5. And they kind of could balance each other out, the good of getting a save or the bad of getting a loss. Well, since we eliminated wins and losses, we decided to add the blown save. Our commissioner decided to add the blown save as a -5. So we've never before counted blown saves at all. But this is just to try to balance out for relievers the fact they might get a save, but there should also be the possibility they get a blown save. And just today, the commissioner of our league, and I'm giving him full credit for this, I'll even quote him here a little bit. His name is Morgan Conrad. He does a great job, and we have such a fun time in this league. He posted an article called "Beware the Blown Save." And here's what happens is that it has, and I'm going to quote him here, it has one big side effect, and that is a holds guy can also earn a blown save, and the rules for it are a bit strange. So I'm quoting Morgan here. If your reliever gives up inherited runners, he can earn a blown save while giving up no runs. Overall, this new rule, I think, hurts your 7th and 8th inning holds guys. In a way, it's good. They can no longer give up the lead and then earn a cheap win when their team makes a comeback. But many times, it's an unfair penalty. End of quote. So thanks, Morgan, for that. And I think this is a great point if you're playing in a fantasy league. It is really interesting that you can so easily end up with a blown save. If you come in a game where your team is ahead by 1 run, and the pitcher before you leaves a runner on third base, which is not your fault at all, and maybe they score in some very minor way, might be a sacrifice fly, might be a ground out that scores that run, and that run doesn't count against you, it counts against the previous pitcher. However, because the game is now tied, you have blown the save opportunity. So it's an interesting twist in the rules, and in a future episode, we will talk more about how saves work and how they used to work, because you used to get saves in other situations that aren't common any longer. Anyway, that's my points league fantasy baseball talk for today. Okay, every week we promise you a Blimerick, our baseball limerick of the week. And because of this topic of blown saves, that's what I'm dedicating this limerick to. So this Blimerick is called Blown Saves. Beware the blown save when you set up. An inherited runner can wreak havoc. If you let that guy score to tie up the game once more, you're likely to feel really fed up. Because, of course, you got saddled with a blown save. All right, on to our blast from the past. As mentioned earlier, Ken Griffey Jr. was traded in 2000 for 4 players. The 2 primary players in that trade were center fielder Mike Cameron and journeyman pitcher Brett Tomko. Now, Tomko was nothing special. He was used as a spot starter and long reliever over 2 very forgettable seasons. Mike Cameron, however, is our blast from the past player. He played 4 seasons for Seattle and was surprisingly good. His batting average was just .256, but he walked frequently, had a good eye at the plate. He had a .350 on-base percentage and a .798 OPS, on base plus slugging. With decent power, he averaged 22 homers a year over that period for an OPS plus of 112. And I got to tell you, I prefer OPS plus when I'm comparing players or thinking about them rather than just OPS, because OPS plus will go by what happened that year and how it will show you, and you probably know this, but it will show you how much above or below the average OPS that player was. So, for example, in those 4 years with Seattle, Cameron had an OPS plus of 112. So 100 is the baseline. 100 means your OPS, your on-base plus slugging, your offensive contribution to the team. 100 would be average, league average. If you're like 90, then you're 10% below league average. At 112, Mike Cameron is 12% above league average, which is pretty darn good, especially given that he also won 2 Gold Gloves and made the All-Star team with his tenure during the Mariners. And given the fact that Griffey was injured during much of his time with the Reds, Seattle actually came out okay on this deal, in my opinion. Although, diehard Mariners fans might not agree. And by the way, Mike Cameron's son, Daz Cameron, is a top 10 prospect for the Detroit Tigers, who came over in the trade of Justin Verlander to the Astros in 2017. Okay, that's all I have for you today. Join us next time when I'll be joined by a 7-time fantasy baseball champion who will share her history and maybe some tips to help you out in your league. And regardless of whether you play fantasy or not, join us anyway, because honestly, what can be better than talking baseball? Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Phil Estruth Harrison. We'll see you next time on My Week in Baseball.